We'll start the show in just a minute, but first, a word from our premier brand sponsor, CasaGo, and co-sponsors Guest Ranger and Good Neighbor Tech.
CasaGo's founder, Steve Schwab, has been quoted as saying, "You can only be a local in one place." This simple yet profound statement is the basis of CasaGo's franchise model, which allows locally owned vacation rental management companies the ability to compete at a national level by leveraging the systems, software, and support and buying power of a much larger organization.
As a CasaGo franchisee, you have the freedom to run your business with the support of a community of like-minded professionals while leveraging the economies of scale and buying power to increase profitability and reduce operating costs.
Guest Ranger is the premier guest screening and chargeback protection solution. Leveraging AI, their tool effectively detects fraudulent activity, fake IDs, and underage guests, while also performing comprehensive dynamic background checks. With Guest Ranger, businesses can rest assured that their customers are safe and secure.
Good Neighbor Tech allows you to manage your properties remotely and intelligently, protecting your owners and your guests. Their smart Wi-Fi locks allow you to provide temporary access to home and garage from anywhere and keep track of when guests and service providers are in the property. Good Neighbor Tech provides the ability for you to collect email addresses from all guests staying in a property, not just the one who booked the reservation. Every guest who connects to the internet will see your branded welcome page and be prompted to provide their email address in order to connect to the Wi-Fi.
Visit casago.com/franchise, guestranger.com, and goodneighbortech.com for more information.
Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we're joined today with Graham Donoghue, who is the Group CEO of Sykes Cottages. Graham, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Lovely to be here.
So Group CEO, that's a different title. I think that bears some explaining to us.
Yes, what exactly is that?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it sounds grander than it probably is, but we are a group as an organization. We're a group of businesses. And so when most people hear me or I'm generally talking through the lens of Sykes Cottages. But actually, we're part of an umbrella group called the Forge, F-O-R-G, Holiday Group. And that is a collection of different divisions and different brands that sit under the responsibility of myself as a CEO. And so we have an agency business, which you'll be very familiar with, property manager, and we have 25 brands in that portfolio. And they manage about 24,000 properties, mostly in the UK and in New Zealand. But then we have another business called Forest Holidays, which is in a different division. We call it the Specialist Operator Division. And that's where we build ourselves and we manage and we own cabins in the forests in the UK. Still to take people on holiday, have a really nice time. And then we have another business, which is in the division, a caravans business, where we have, static caravans. I think you probably know them in your market, or static homes. We have 6,500 of them we look after. And then we have an international business as well. So my job as Group CEO is to be the CEO of all those divisions and bring them all together under the umbrella of the Forge Holiday Group.
Wow. That's a heck of a job right there between different.
Heck of a long answer as well.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting though. It sounds like what you have over there is extremely multidimensional, and we're excited to dive into your history and just, how business is going over there and the different layers of the business that you have. But is that the 24,000 rentals? Is that encompasses all the different groups that you just mentioned?
Yeah, it's 31,500, including all of them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, are you the largest overseas?
No, not really. We're one of the largest exclusive because all those properties and units we exclusively look after, i.e. we don't allow the owners to rent them out, or they're not rented out by, any of our parties. But no, there's other providers out there, operators that have more supply than that, but they tend to have third party properties, but they've syndicated them in from someone else. We're definitely one of the largest.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
And we're the best and fastest growing.
I like that.
Can you tell us a little bit about how, because you haven't always been in the rental business, if I'm not mistaken, that you didn't start out your professional career in this industry, right?
No. It was a perfect calling and it found me. But no, I've only had 3 jobs or big jobs in my career. The first one at a very young age, I worked for a big tourism company called TUI. So TUI is one of the largest tourism companies in the world. Touristic Union International, so a German-based sort of a company. And I joined that business when the internet wasn't really a thing. That's how long ago it was. Like, they had this idea that this thing called the internet might be quite transformative, but it was mostly about retail shops, travel shops, people, buying holidays and shops and contact centers. And over the 7 years I was there, I became a director of that company at quite a young age. And my job was to be a pain in the backside and just help educate this older business about the internet and e-commerce. It was so long ago, my job title was Director of New Media, because it was called.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. The new media, yeah. So I did that for 7 years and it was huge when I left. We went from nothing to about £3.5 billion of sort of a turnover in 7 years. And I was lucky enough to look after lots of brands all over Europe. So it was really interesting. I then went and had my second proper job. I worked for a financial services company that had a travel business. And that was called Money Supermarket. And it was one of the largest IPOs in Europe when I joined them back in 2007. And they were an aggregator, so a price comparison website. They aggregated, the banks, insurance companies, credit cards, loans, mortgages, travel, huge sort of a business. And at the time when price comparison websites and aggregators, nobody had really heard of them. They were the first in the world, and they were certainly the largest for a long period of time. So I was there for 7 years. I was the managing director of that business, and we had a travel business. And then I weirdly retired for about a year. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got really good at gardening. Spent some time reacquainting myself with my 2 lovely children. And then I found Sykes found me. In fact, it was private equity, because we're a private equity-backed company, that sort of found me. And then they said, we'd like you to come and be the CEO of this business. And I looked at it, and if I'm really honest, it was a small business compared to what I'd run before. But I just I fell in love with the category, and I fell in love with the opportunity, because what I could see is this massive fragmentation of, vacation rental market, not just in the UK, but globally, an opportunity to use technology and service to scale the business, really fast, really quickly through organic growth, but also through, buying lots of other businesses and bolting them together and making them better. So, and that was 7 years ago. So I might have a 7-year itch, it might just be the cycle to go through every 7 years. I have to find something new, but it's been incredible and it's been good fun.
Now, were you familiar with vacation rentals or short-term rentals prior to getting involved with Sykes, or just kind of knew of them, but none of your prior roles had directly involved?
Well, at TUI, we had a couple of vacation rental type businesses. We had a villa business. We also owned a couple of businesses in Germany that was sort of doing vacation rental homes as well. And I guess because TUI were large, I was lucky enough to meet in the early days of my career some people who were running some very big, interesting businesses. So, early on, I met the original founders of Booking.com. We met the original founders of, I guess, what was Home and Away. And so, I had exposure to that sort of a category, but I didn't really realize how big it was or how fragmented it was. And I guess all the different brands that existed globally that were doing it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we talk a lot on the show about how, brands over on your side of the pond kind of operated similarly to some of the legacy brands on our side of the pond that are in, key destination markets that a lot of companies, the one I was with in particular, and many others, built their own software, because there just wasn't options back, 20 years ago. And I think there's a lot of good comparisons between, how those businesses operated and how they really built their brands as a big part of the business. And it seems like, it has just been able to be maintained better in Europe, that a lot of these big brands still exist, whereas many of them have gotten broken up over in the States over here. But we'll be back in just a minute after a word from our premier brand sponsor, Costco.
Well, we're a family-owned company, family-run, only family works in it. And, we're kind of a boutique, as people have said. I'm not sure what boutique means, but that's what we are. When I started this business, helping one lady out who did all of the work herself and just wanted me to look after her property and make sure that the housekeeper got it cleaned, I thought I was the only person doing this because it was vacation rental by owner, and I wasn't an owner.
That's Michael Godfrey, owner, operator of Sun Valley, Idaho Costco franchise. Michael started the business in 2012, growing organically by building relationships and trust within his high-end resort community.
I'm a ski instructor. My son's a ski instructor. My daughter's a ski instructor. And that makes you an ambassador right off the bat of Sun Valley. We get tourists in, we get people in that look at our lives and just say, oh, if I could ever live a life like this. And we appreciate that. And we know how blessed we are to live this life. And then to have something like this business, which gets its number one goal is to bring people here and show them how we live and let them experience it also.
We asked Michael if he had ever imagined that he would be part of a vacation rental franchise.
I had no idea there was even such a thing. I went down there and met with, Costco at their office, and, it was pretty impressive. And I started to realize how we could really piggyback on there and bring in their the resources that they have into our company, and not even costing us any more money because we're already paying percentages out to our various purveyors of the different channel masters and revenue managers and property management software and stuff. And so it's really not a cost. In many ways, I believe it's going to simplify what we do by putting everything more in one basket than having it so spread out. So Costco offers such a large suite of services that I look at as employees, as having depth. So by going with Costco, I become a much bigger company with no no additional expenses. No overhead. I mean, I don't consider that overhead, and yet I've got the backing of a large, successful business. By going with them, I just think we can, grow bigger without adding employees, and having, the depth and knowledge of these guys that really do it well. I've mentioned before, I said, you never know you got in on the ground floor of something until you're on the 10th floor and you're looking back. So I think it's just, I've met the people there. They're personable. They run their business like we do. It's all about relationship. And, they know stuff. I know stuff. We work together, but they're, they've got the resources to help out when I've got questions.
To hear more stories from franchisees like Michael and learn about Costco's vacation rental franchise model, visit costco.com/franchise.
What have you seen as the evolution of brand within short-term rentals?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of consolidation in this side of the pond, if you want to call it that. So some of that I have to be guilty for because I've been driving quite a lot of it. And I guess what struck me is the business models are all different. At the very core, I think, globally, we're sort of, matching demand with supply. We're taking people on holiday. We're hoping they have a really good time and they come back. That actually how we do business, how the brands market themselves, whether these brands are consumer brands or something else, I've seen massive sort of differences about how people, utilize various different, OTAs or platforms, etc. So, big consolidation across sort of Europe. And a big learning for me in my sort of 7 years is that, I naively thought that we could take a model that existed in the UK and it would be the exact same model in Europe and the exact same model in New Zealand when we bought a business in New Zealand and, the exact same model in the US. And I guess I've been educated over the years that it's very different. It might look the same, but once you start unwrapping the sort of the layers, they all operate completely differently, which is why I think there's not been more consolidation.
Yeah, it's hard to scale when you've got operations that are so inherently different, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
But one of the things, if I'm not mistaken, again, this is just going off of like things I've read about the organization, is that when you guys buy a brand or you buy somebody, it becomes part of Sykes, but you still let the brand kind of stand on its own. So it's, something by Sykes Holidays. It still has that original look and feel to it. Is that something that you purposely did, or is it a one-off, like just you do it with every organization that you buy or?
No, it was very intentional because we had two approaches. One was to, acquire businesses and then fold them into the parent company, kill the brand, and get all the economies of scale and all the synergies, really quite quickly. But what we realized is most of these smaller businesses have been around for 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
They had a soul. They had a soul in a community. They were owned by people who were generally still around. They play quite an important part in communities. And the most important thing to retain, apart from the people we were hiring, was the properties themselves. So you wanted to make sure that there was continuity, and we wanted to make sure that any owners that were renting the property out with some of these local brands weren't going to be afraid of this big, large, almost corporate company coming along. So it also allowed us to have conversations with lots of owners because we talked them through the process, and they sort of understood that we weren't going to kill their legacy. We're going to look after it and protect it, but we're going to make it better because we're going to give them, better technology, better capability. That we're going to benefit from everything essentially. But the people would still remain, the brand would still remain, the local offices would still remain. But there's more bookings, less hassle was sort of the theme. And I mean, that's what we've done. We've done it 20 odd times, and there's an overhead to doing it. But we still think it's the right thing to do to retain great properties and great locations. Because there's a reason also why owners choose to list their properties with a professionally managed property manager in the local area and not stick it on a big platform or stick it on a big property manager. And we had to be sympathetic to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. And, just to draw that comparison again, when people talk about short-term rentals as a new thing, certainly, that it's not a new thing. And it's been in your, side for many, many, many years. I mean, going back probably 50, 60 years versus, in the States, it's more, 30, 40 years ago that some of the larger companies that have been around a long time started, but under the same auspices that it's hard to really to lose those brands if you're still in business and you've stayed connected with your guests and homeowners and all that time, it is hard to get rid of that. And it reminds me a little bit your model of what Steve Milo is doing in different markets where he's leaving the local brands in place. And I can imagine he probably looked to your model as an example when making that decision.
Yeah, it's very similar
for him, but
no one needs to speak for Steve Milo. It's very similar. It's very similar to what Steve does. And I think, what I will say is, we don't put any marketing dollars behind any of the local brands, other than each brand has a small budget and they can do good with it. They can go to a local fair. They can sponsor a local football team. They can just
local marketing.
Yeah. But the millions and millions of dollars that we spend on marketing all just get piled into the sort of the Sykes brand. And when you look at booking volume, because all the supply goes onto one platform, and we can pick and choose where it goes. But most of the booking volume, 85% of the volume comes through Sykes because it's a powerhouse and it gets, 55 million visits a year.
Now, are they all on the same software, property management systems, or they are? Okay. So that's one thing, you do convert them over. Is it a custom system or?
Yes. We build it built by ourselves, along with a revenue management system, along with our A/B multivariate test, and pretty much everything. We have 200 engineers.
Wow.
Everything we have, we sort of built ourselves, other than Salesforce and as you would expect, platforms like that. So what normally happens is we acquire a business. We normally wait normally it's, up to 3 months where we learn. Because what we found is, everything that we do in Sykes is not always the best way of doing things. Quite often we'll go into a local brand and we'll discover that this brand is brilliant at,
one thing
management, whatever it may be. And so we learn from it. And then eventually we sort of say, well, that's really good. Let's replicate that across the business. And so there's this sort of a relationship going on where we learn, we understand, and then we deploy our technology, and then we take some of the lessons learned. And as I said, we've done it 24, 25, I lose count, 24, 25 times.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's worked pretty well. And as you said, so Sykes is 30, what's Sykes now? 31 years old as a brand.
Okay.
Forest Holidays, interestingly, is 50 this year.
Wow.
And that was one of the original sort of early vacation rental sort of season in the UK. So yeah, some of the brands I bought, one of the brands that we own, Helpful Holidays, that I think is about 45-year-old as a brand. Still in the same location it was 45 years ago. It's fascinating when you go to visit them and you see the old catalogs and the old.
Oh yeah. Again, that's so what our market's here too. The brochures and everything that we all used to do, and some companies still do them. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier about direct mail actually is still quite effective if you can do it cost effectively. It really does make an impact since people don't do it quite as much anymore. But
all we're trying to do is, the reason we do it is we want to find really good properties in good locations.
Yeah.
And we want to hopefully deliver a really good service and hold on to that supply, for the average lifetime value, which is about 6 years in our portfolio, approximately. And sometimes the only way to get the best supply is to go and buy businesses that already have it. Sure. And sometimes you'll pay a lot of money for them. And we don't really care what we pay for a business within reason. What we care is how much value can that business help us create in our portfolio.
Right. So how did you guys, managing a portfolio the size that you do, how did you guys get through COVID? Europe had a much tougher time, I think, than the US did, because we're a little fast and loose with rules over here, I think, more so. Yeah. So you definitely, do you feel like you guys are like on the upswing? Doing how we were 2 years ago when we came out of COVID? Or are you still struggling?
No, look, two things, alcohol and Valium.
That's all it takes. Survive a pandemic.
It was hell, I'll be honest with you. It was one of the probably the most difficult, challenging times in my career. We went through a situation where we had something like 100,000 bookings that were instantly impacted because we were in lockdown.
Right.
And what was happening was all those people were calling us and demanding their money back, because at the same time, some people were losing their jobs. Some people didn't know, what was happening. There was all that uncertainty. Now, remember, we're an agent and we work on behalf of an owner. And, the legal construct really is a contract between a consumer and an owner. And we act as that middleman. And when we create a booking, that's when we fulfill a service and we take a commission and so forth. So it got really quite messy because we pay our owners in advance of people going into the properties and help with cash flow. So you have all these people who we've collected the money, but then we've given the money to the owners. And then there are people that are asking for the money back. So they're therefore calling us to ask for the money back. And we didn't have it because we've given it to the owners. And trying to get it back was not easy.
Sure. Yeah.
The consumers didn't care. So yeah, it was 3 or 4 months of hell, I would say. We were taking about 10,000 phone calls a day, to give you an idea of the volume.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
During that 18-month period, we offered 154 million sterling of refunds.
Oh my gosh!
Back to consumers. But when the government said that people could travel in the UK, and every week it was a different message. But as soon as they did say they could travel, then we were, there was 10,000 people calling for their money back, but there was also 10,000 people, calling or going onto the website trying to book a holiday. So it was like famine to feast in a heartbeat.
Yeah. We say it was like Black Friday in reverse for all of us.
So
doing all the refunds.
But we learned a lot. I mean, I think we came out of the pandemic stronger as a business. Our people were more resilient. We managed to get a lot of technology developed really quite quickly for some reason. It's all still a mystery to me how we managed to get it done so quickly. But as a team, we were sort of strong, and actually all of our, we never had made a single person redundant. Everybody was still there. Our investors were great. So,
oh, that's good.
It proved to us we're a good, resilient sort of a business. And, I don't want to call that a distant memory because it's still there. But, for 2 years, we were just riding that roller coaster, through 2020, 2021, 2022, a relatively normal year. And 2023, if I look at now, it's sort of going back to a similar booking pace and pattern to 2019. So sort of a COVID, which is challenging because most of our models, we tend to use historical models to, and so we're having to play around with all different things to understand pace curves, etc. But it was definitely a challenging time.
Alex and I, and all the people that we've talked to on the show, is that COVID, the people that were able to survive through COVID as a business, it made everybody stronger as the industry as a whole. Like the voice became stronger, the collaboration became more prevalent, the technology advancements. Again, how come we couldn't advance that much technology 2 years prior? It would have been great to have some of this stuff. But yeah, I think that COVID was as horrible as it was for everybody globally. For our industry, was probably the best thing that could have happened in terms of just really turning us around and giving us, again, a voice and a collective mission to make the industry better.
One of the most important things that we focused on is, and this is not probably going to sound the way I wanted to sound, but we have a lot of demand. We've always had a lot of demand. And, in the UK and in Europe, parts of Europe, it is a different model from, I know how the model operates from a demand generation in say, the US. 85% of our bookings are coming to us direct.
Wow.
And for every one person that, 100 people that visit the website, one person buys. So there's a lot of excess demand. What we focused on during COVID was, we have to protect our owners because that is critical for the future. We need to stand in front of our owners. And even although legally we don't have to, we're an agent and we could hide behind all of that. It was important because, coming out of the other side of it, our owners will remember why they are choosing to rent their property with a professional property manager and not a platform. And we could see what some of the big platforms were doing. And we could see the impact that was having on owners. And we started to get more and more owners who were coming from, I won't name them, but you can imagine. Decent servers yesterday. And some of those platforms and, some of those owners were coming over saying, no, we know maybe the commission's a bit more, but actually we recognize the value that you guys are bringing as professionally managed property managers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the owner should be at the center of everything that you do, and protecting their assets is the most important part of the job, really. And I think a lot of companies, over in the United States did similar, that they protected the owners and they didn't refund 100% of monies. And we saw the same thing. The demand was just so excessive on the other side of it that it ended up being okay. Of course, Airbnb ran with the narrative and made it seem like, they were the heroes to be refunding the guests. But I think ultimately it's panned out well in all of our favor that, taking the homeowner side was the right thing to do. But I'm curious, do you still pay the owners in advance now, or did that change at all after COVID?
We went and asked the owners during COVID, do you want to continue to be paid in advance, or do you want to be paid in arrears? And interestingly, 50% of our owners picked to be paid in arrears, because actually it was easier for them because they didn't want the hassle of refunding back to us and et cetera, et cetera. So but 50% of them still needed that cash flow to pay their mortgage or to pay their bills or whatever. So yeah, it's about a 50-50 split at the moment, but we make it the owner's choice. You know, they can pick and choose. And again, it's just something that we do that's different from the norm. And some owners quite like it.
Yeah, I've heard of it in ski markets in the US. There's a few pockets of companies that do it. And I imagine during something like as large as COVID, that has to be like a very scary process to be in the middle of that fight because you understand both sides of it. But I wanted to ask you about your distribution because I feel like one of the things that I've heard often about Sykes, and you just said it, like 85% of your business is direct. So you don't have to do a lot of distribution. But what do you do to supplement? You know, you look at numbers out of Europe, and there was actually one that was on with a channel provider the other day, and Key Data. They had done a webinar, and they highlighted the fact that in Europe it's very heavy channels, where in the US it's very heavy direct. And so I work for a channel, so we're constantly having the conversation, diversifying your distribution. But you look at some of the Europe numbers again, and I don't know how much it includes of your data points. But it would appear that the larger channel players have a much larger stake or grab share of the bookings than what you guys are getting. I mean, you guys are very direct, so you're not giving them a lot of it, but it seems like it's very lopsided from what the US is. So you have obviously a good strategy, and I'd love to hear more about that, your direct booking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so we spend a lot of money in marketing. That helps. So,
yeah. Having a budget helps.
Yeah, having a budget helps. So we spend about sterling here. Although it's probably worth as much as $1, but 35 million a year roughly. We sort of spend in marketing. Most of our marketing is digital, so measurable direct response.
Yeah,
there's maybe a couple of million that we spend in above the line. So we'll do TV campaigns, radio, brand marketing, but most of it is, if I spend $1, I need $1.50 back. And, we pick and choose the channels. In our marketing department, we have, I think there's about 120.
Wow.
Department now. So it shows you the idea. And they're obviously split into disciplines around customer relationship management, CRM.
Sure.
And their primary objective is rebook rate. So we measure,
keeping those
measures. Yeah, exactly. So we measure rebook, and we look at our total active base, and we try to get about 50% of our people who book with us before to book again. We obviously then have a large search and optimization team. They're constantly writing copy or outbound campaigns or digital SEO. We have a large paid media campaign, working with your Google and, your Bing or whatever it may be. We have a growing social media team who will spend time. It's more difficult to get the direct response on the social media.
It is, yeah.
But if you've got...
for the brand, it's so important.
Yeah, if you've got millions of people there, you sort of got to be there. And so I take a view on things like TikTok, I don't really care. I just need you to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
However, you do have to be careful, because what we found during COVID is the social media channels were the most aggressive in terms of, the interactions from a negative point of view. We obviously have a partnerships team. So we have about 700 partners we work with, various different guys. Some of them, we're fully powering their sort of a website. Some of them are third parties, like a booking.com. And then we then have a brand team, doing all the brand sort of marketing as well. So those are all the sort of the disciplines. And obviously when we do our budgets annually, we sit down and say, how many sessions do we need? How do these sessions convert? How does it look across the different devices? How much of the traffic is going to come through mobile versus app, etc. We set our targets, we build the annual sort of a budget, and then we just monitor people against it, and we'll pivot and we'll adapt. But that's pretty much how it works, and it's been pretty successful. Now, we do know that we could probably increase the volume if we use some of the third-party channels. But we like to control the distribution. We like to control the customer. Yeah. We know there's value in us having ownership of that customer. So we're not so seduced by more profit than we are by having the control. And it's a balance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So are you, the marketing that you're doing is bringing guests back to Sykes Holidays, not directly to the individual brands since they manage their own local budgets? Is that how it works?
No, it's so most of that 30 odd million is on Sykes.
Okay.
So it's all bringing people into Sykes. And so, the brands, most of the traffic on the brands is either organic traffic. Yeah. So SEO, because they have history, they have legacy. The content's all unique in the brands. So although we have duplicate properties, all the content is written unique for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. And then there's a small amount, as we said, that of sort of marketing. So Sykes is the powerhouse that just drives all the volume. And that's where all the marketing goes behind.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if you're still 50% rebooking, that's great that they're still remembering to go back to Sykes to rebook and not just going directly to the local brand, which I guess if they do that, that's not a bad thing for you. But I mean, with your main emphasis from an advertising standpoint on driving it to Sykes, it makes a lot of sense. And very similarly, reminds me of what we're doing at Costigo, of course, too. So different models, but going after the same thing.
You've got to be careful as well, and it's like really complicated math because let me give you an example, and hopefully it makes sense. If you buy a business that is really good at selling in high season, they literally the properties are so good they don't need to do marketing, and they're really good at selling in July and August. So the cost per acquisition of that consumer is really low. What you don't want to do is to put that property onto a platform like Sykes, where the cost per acquisition could be much higher because it's like a blended cost per acquisition. So we have this thing called the switchboard. And if you imagine, like someone who's operating multiple train tracks at the same time and deciding which property goes on where, goes on which marketing channel to optimize the blended cost per acquisition, make it most effective to drive it down as low as you possibly can. So, and that's what the teams do. We also incentivize customers to come back direct, through campaigns. So in January, 75% of everybody who booked a holiday with us downloaded our app before they went on holiday. And then we use that to send push notifications. You might get a little cheeky voucher on the day that you're due to, come home to ask you to rebook, etc. Because I would rather give a consumer, $30 to rebook than give it to Google. So we do a lot of campaigns to try and encourage people to sort of come back, and then we do loyalty campaigns as well. So we have a discount and a loyalty program that the more you book with us, the more benefits you get as well.
I was going to ask you, because you have so much inventory, like did you have some sort of loyalty program? But how many members do you have that participate in that?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know. It's in the hundreds of thousands.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would be making a number up if I told you.
Is that a system that you built, or is that an off-the-shelf product?
Actually, that one is Salesforce.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Nobody's quite gotten loyalty right, I don't think, in vacation rentals yet. And I think a lot of it comes down to the complexities on the tech side of things, because especially if you're a multi-market player, that's when loyalty makes the most sense to implement. But it also is difficult when you've got different margins depending on properties and locations and things like that. It's like building a matrix around it. I'm sure somebody can do it, but to my knowledge, no one's really done it quite well. But what other technology?
Marriott could probably do a very good job of it.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we do okay.
There's hotel. Well, I mean, I don't know. For sure, hotel, yes, but and they brought in vacation rental as part of that, but as a vacation rental, company, I haven't seen any. Yeah,
I think and this may be slightly controversial, but because we control the supply, and we have all these great homes in great locations, and the only place you really can buy them is with us. That breeds loyalty in a weird way, because
it 100% does. Yeah.
I always, I know it's easy to say, but controlling your distribution, controlling your supply and control your distribution. Making it available to everybody, on every single platform It's just not something that we ever wanted to do. So therefore, if you want the best houses in Cornwall, the Lake District or whatever, you got to come to us because we have them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You make your own rules when you're in that position to be, 85% book direct. That lets you do things that other companies can't do. And it puts you in a good position to, really be able to structure things, how it makes sense for your business and not have to go with what the OTAs want to stress or the different things that they can do to change how you have to operate. But it's not something that everybody can do. And certainly being of volume and size makes a big difference. But I was also curious, what other things within your tech stack, what do you outsource versus what is built? I know that you said the PMS was built in-house, but what other things are on your?
Not a lot. So I'll try and explain our tech, how it works. So if you think of back-end technology platform, and then you think of front-end product, and that's how we split. So we have, it's actually about 100 in each department. So about 100 people in the product. And the products team, what they're doing is constantly trying to improve conversion on the website and constantly trying to build new experiences on the website, or constantly trying to increase the net promoter score through the website, et cetera, et cetera. And what they're running is thousands of multivariate or A/B tests, and they're trying to fail about 80% of the time and have success 20% of the time. And we built all of that platform ourselves to sort of run that. So it's very, very complicated. And, a lot of that people, the leadership came from Booking.com, who are masters at this. And we just we hired a lot of them, and then suddenly we just productionized it. And so we look, when you've got so much volume, you're looking for all those marginal gains constantly. And the way that we split that team up is we split them into different squads, that are responsible for different parts of the website. Someone's responsible for search, someone's responsible for checkout, someone's responsible for landing pages, and we build it out that way. But then we have an app team as well. And so forth. Then your back end platform and a PMS system. Back end is really, platform and data. So within data, we have data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, and they work on this principle of, taking the data, turning it into insight, and then creating action that creates value. So lots of really smart people doing lots of clever things. And then we have the platform teams that are really looking at the core property management system in terms of enhancing it and building out new functionality and maintaining it and supporting it and deploying it into different countries or into different brands, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a few other nuances sort of in there, but that's the structure of how we sort of are set up. And the teams, basically, it's all agile development. They're working on sprints generally every 2 to 3 weeks. And they're probably doing about 5 releases a day in terms of the amount of stuff that's coming off the production line. And all of that links back to how does it support our customers, how does it support our owners, and how does it support our employees as the three.
Yeah, exactly. The three stakeholders.
Three customers. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I can see why you have 200 people within that department because that's 100% necessary at that volume. And it makes sense to have a separate team working on the property management system versus the website. And a lot of times in the tech that we've built in the US, you have one team internally that's working on that. And it's like everybody's just going in a million different directions with there's fires everywhere. So it sounds like it's been organized a little bit.
Yeah, but it's far from perfect. Don't get me wrong. But, there's still 1,800 people in our organization doing other stuff. So it gives you an idea. There's a lot of people that are customer facing that are sort of in properties, cleaning properties, maintenance of properties, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of operational staff as well.
Yeah. So how do you guys, how to ask this question operationally, when you go into, into a market, you mentioned that, again, you go into these organizations and sometimes you find that they have a better efficiency or a better way of doing it. And I would imagine that some of these older organizations, they're not tech forward thinking, savvy people, and they've been doing it. Again, everything's written in a book. They had their accounting is in a ledger, handwritten ledger, that type of thing. How do you educate those businesses and kind of transition them over to the technology while incorporating the efficiencies that maybe they have, so that it is a smooth transition, not only for the owner who's on their plan, but then for the guest who's always been booking with them? That has to be, when you're doing it at scale in multiple different markets. I mean, I'm sure you have some sort of format that you roll out, but I'd love to hear about that.
We have integration teams.
Okay.
So we have people I think of them as horizontals that sit across the whole organization, that go in and then they spend time, they listen, they learn, they understand. They try to work out whether we have one of these things in the organization already that can benefit this business, or whether we can build something that will benefit this business we acquire, but also then benefit the rest of the organization. So I'll give you a good example, slightly different. So when we acquired a business in New Zealand, New Zealand is like 100% managed service. As in, the 2,000 plus or 2,400 properties there. We sort of do full managed service, looking after everything for those particular owners. So you can imagine there's a lot of operational, linen, cleaning, maintenance, a lot of that stuff going on. We don't have so much of that in the UK, but they had built a pretty good system internally to sort of handle it, but it couldn't scale. It couldn't. We could utilize it across the UK. So there was a local engineering team there. So we used some of our people in the UK. We augmented them with some of the people locally, and then we built a new platform based on their knowledge, based on their understanding.
Oh, wow.
And then we backflushed it back into the UK to say, not only can this support the New Zealand business now and it's nice and new and shiny, but actually how can we start to use it in our businesses in the UK? But it was engineered effectively by the local team, just augmented by some of the team back in the UK. And we've done that a few times in terms of sort of a copying it. We do often find that we go in and we find some really good ideas, there's really good ways of working, and we will help productionize it. So, I can give you an example. One business that we acquired, a really high-end business, high-touch service, did everything for the owners, high net worth individuals. But, they were spending all of the time, writing invoices out for light bulbs and, plugs and all that sort of stuff. We just went in and looked at it and said, this is amazing what you do. And we can see the value here, but let us help you productionize this. Let us help you build this into a system so we can make the whole thing really smooth. And you can spend your time on service, not writing invoices or doing all these various different things as well. But we want you to retain the expertise and the thinking, but use technology. We've always come in from the approach of the reason why we have 2,000 people is we're a technology-driven company, but we use people and we use our human capital to hopefully deliver exceptional service. What I'm always looking at is I don't want the really clever, smart people I have doing tasks that could be done by technology that don't have a lot of value, to the end stakeholder. But actually being there at, 10 o'clock at night on the phone when there's a, problem with your boiler and be able to service that and deal with it, that has value. But
exactly.
But being able to answer the phone to add an additional pet onto your booking, that doesn't have value. So let's use the technology to do that. So and that's our approach constantly.
And I'm sure there's a lot of these businesses that the light bulb comes on. They're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that it could be so much better, but they just didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know in terms of what the technology could provide for them. So that's great that you can do that.
And all the financial reporting and everything comes out of the box on our platform. So, we acquire businesses and we go in and they have a brochure, and they're doing, basic pricing. And then suddenly they've got the most sophisticated, incredible dynamic pricing tool or everyday pricing module that just comes out of the box.
Right.
And that just gets fed into our system. And so that's really good because obviously it helps us understand how we can create more value, and it benefits the owners as well. So all of that stuff is a real plus.
Yeah, the economies of scale clearly work in a lot of situations like that. That's definitely one of the benefits that Vacasa has had in the situations where they do come in and it is a good situation for that market. But we see it often at Casago too, that these companies that they they knew that they needed more help on the back office side. And then the revenue management piece, a lot of them had not been doing revenue management prior. And it's, sometimes it's small things, but small things can make a massive impact if done the right way. And I'm sure you see that all the time in these different acquisitions. So there's a good benefit.
one of the big things, and you've probably heard me spoken about this before, is Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
Because, we have a lot of really great businesses, but what they weren't doing is really monitoring the performance of, say, individual properties, and looking at, the quality, the feedback on the maintenance, the feedback on the cleanliness, the accuracy of descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. So we put this really rigorous process into all of these businesses, and then we're able to really lift up the quality and the Net Promoter Score. And when there's some bad behavior, you're able to catch it really quite quickly and do something about it. And then that just created this flywheel effect of, well, the owners are generally happier, guests are happier, there's less noise in the business, and there's, just better quality, and that's made a real difference. And every single brand that we have has these targets, has these measures, has this feedback, has people that are looking at all the detractors, and we've productionized a lot of it as well to try and enhance the overall experience.
What is your overall, I mean, I don't know, it might be different by area, but your attrition rate for owners leaving the program versus coming on, or vice versa?
15%.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Two-thirds of that is quite difficult to influence, because the biggest single reason people leaving us is selling the property.
Sure.
And although that is an opportunity in itself, but that's maybe another podcast. So about 15% sort of leavers. Within that, there's probably about 2 or 3% also forced churn, where we're like, your Net Promoter Score is not good enough.
Yeah, not a good relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And it does happen. And then the remaining part is either we've not done a good job, or we haven't managed expectations. Or it just is, the return is just not good enough. It's my heating bill's gone up by 25%, and you put my prices up by 5%. And that's not work. And my mortgage, my interest rates have gone up. It's a 40-year high in interest rates in the UK, and inflation is 10.1%. So some of it is that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so what would be next, Graham? I mean, what's your big motivation for 2023 for the company and also personally?
Well, as I explained at the beginning, we're this sort of a group now, and when it comes to property management and agency in the UK, genuinely we're running out of supply a little bit, which is a weird thing to say, but we're growing so fast, and it's difficult. It's difficult to influence some of the supply that's still there, because it's second homes that aren't rented out. It's quite difficult to influence them. Or it's second homes that are rented out on Airbnb or Booking.com. And again, it's not quite so easy to influence them, although that is a growing part of our portfolio. So I think, on the agency side, we're going to just keep doing what we're doing. Organically, we have to onboard about 6,000 properties a year, almost to stand still. It's not quite that, but that's the target. This year, I think it's 7,000. We'll continue to look at some M&A opportunities, but also, as I explained, we have these other businesses, we have these other divisions. So we've just opened a new location in South Wales, where we've built 60 new cabins in the forest, working with the public land in the UK through the Forestry Commission. We're just about to then start building another one in Scotland. And so there's a lot of them that will come in, and they bring in new supply. And because we own them, the margin is quite different. And we run and we own and we operate them. So more of them. And also in the caravan market, we've just done some really interesting things on technology and deployed some new technology in our platform to try and accelerate our growth in that market as well. New Zealand is coming out of COVID. I mean, they're a slower burn, but actually they're doing really well. So it's now reigniting our spark in New Zealand and Australia to understand what we should be doing there in terms of M&A, and then maybe beachheading from Auckland into Melbourne or that sort of East Coast. We have looked long and hard at Europe and the US, but it's not something that, we'll be rushing into, because there is lots of other headroom and other things that we can do in the UK. It fascinates us, and we think the US in particular is an amazing opportunity. But it's you have to be eyes wide open, because the market's different, the players are different. Buying a smallish business for maybe $20-30 million doesn't really scratch the surface of what we really need to do, given the size we are and how transformative. So if there has to be something, it has to be probably more strategic in sort of a larger. And I guess we'll see. There's a lot of movement happening in your market in the US. So we'll see.
There's some big players that might have some inventory on the market.
I was gonna say you could buy Vacasa. I mean, one big buy, so a bunch of little ones.
Yeah, the thing is, right? We have to know how we can add value.
Yeah,
and it's just not quite as straightforward, because it would be very arrogant and naive of us to say that we can come and suddenly we have 85% of our bookings direct, because that's the model in the UK.
Right. It's not the same. It's not
the way consumers search for vacation rentals, and you guys know better than me, it's so different. The market is so different. So we have to be careful. And having businesses that have so much managed service and have so many employees delivering that scares me a little bit as well. So, maybe more niche, specialist, high end, probably more appropriate. But listen, we've got plenty of things to do here in the UK. And me personally, I don't know, I'm just trying to survive.
that's a lot on your plate.
I'm just trying to survive. We're building a house at the moment in Scotland, where I'm from, being told my accent.
Oh, nice.
And that's slowly killing us, because it's 300 miles from where I live, and
right.
Let's just say the tradesmen the builders are not really doing what I'm asking them to do.
They never do.
That's the same in the US. Yeah, problem here.
Now, what about the bees? Where are the bees going to live?
Yeah.
So
with you?
No, my bees are fine. My bees are outside. It's getting dark now here, so the bees will be sleeping now. But I'll continue to expand to be honest with you, I don't need to do much to expand the bee colony, because they do it themselves.
They do it themselves,
basically,
scale.
When the bees are unhappy with their queen, they make another one, and then it just grows from there.
Interesting.
They're decisive.
And I'm very lucky. I live in the countryside, so I have quite a large garden. So we spend a lot of time in the garden and sort of reconnecting with nature. And we have fish, we have chickens, we have lots of little animals sort of outside. So spending more time there. But just super busy. We're spending a lot of time in the organization balancing. We're very profitable, which is again unusual for vacation rental companies. But we're a large scale profitable sort of a company. But I think in the last 2 years we've recognized that we need to do more than just make money. So we've been balancing our profit with our people, with our purpose, and how we think about our planet. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a lot of activity in the organization about really measuring what we should be doing and giving back to the environment, really thinking about what we do in social and communities. We're at the end of becoming the verification process. We're becoming a B Corp, both the Sykes business and the Forest Holidays business as well. And we're spending a lot of time just figuring out basically how we can just be a better corporate citizen and things. And that's fascinating as well. There's a real educational process for me, but also how much our employees are really embracing the fact that we're doing it, and people want to work for businesses that are balancing that profit and purpose, and giving back and encouraging people to volunteer their time free of charge or that we pay for, and then really reconnecting back with communities, and started to measure all the things through our data that we don't measure before around how we use our energy, how we use our water, how we influence our owners, how we think about the suppliers, etc. So that's been really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I did notice that you guys did for Valentine's Day, you had a bring your dog to work day and I didn't see pictures of the kissing booths with the dogs, but that speaks to Alex and I. We are dog lovers. So we would absolutely sign up to be part of that. But it speaks to where you guys are with the company, is that you understand that people are more than just their job and their role. They're so much more, and their dogs are their humans and they're part of the family. And by incorporating all of that, you're allowing them to live their life in their job and not make their job their life.
There's a lot that's respectable on that too, that if you were a company that maybe this isn't something in the past that you focused on quite as much to get to that point where you're at now, that, that is, you're cognizant of it, and also in a position financially that things are going well, that you can focus on it. That's a good place to be.
Yeah, the thing, and the good thing, from our point of view, I mean, we're private equity backed, and we have these overlords, private equity, but these guys as well, they recognize that they have responsibility as well. So that's really very cool. But our office during Doggy Day is the most fun place. There's no work at all.
That's awesome.
But it is pretty awesome, and they do say that your pet can look like your owner. And when we're doing the kissing booths, it's amazing how many of these pets.
It's so funny.
Oh, really?
I can definitely, relate to that for sure. I have several friends, and my own included, I think, that fit into that category.
Oh my gosh.
So that's great. Now, Graham, are you going to be coming to any of the events in the US this year? Any of the BRMA events? Or any
Yeah, I'm planning to come to International. And there's probably a few other things. I might actually be coming across to Focusrite and a few different things as well, but my diary is a bit crazy and it's a bit nuts, but I try to make sure I come across at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, nice. We look forward to connect with you in person then. This has been enlightening and just exciting to hear more about it. I always have kind of known what Sykes was, but not to this level. And I think probably a lot of our audience would feel the same, but very impressive. And we appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Very kind of you.
If anybody wants to contact you, what's the best way to get in touch?
It's probably best just to contact me on LinkedIn. Probably the easiest way of doing it. It's simple way, and I can reach out. And we're a pretty open organization. I'm pretty open as a CEO as well. So generally, anything that we can help and share and learn from others, we're very happy to do it.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. If anybody wants to contact Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to get a review. If you can review us on any podcast app that you listen to, it'll help us, the show grow. And until next time, thank you, everybody.